Come to read with me.
Today we have a lovely fantasy book for you. It's called The Wreck of the Zephyr by Chris Van Allsburg. Please enjoy it. Once, whilst travelling along the seashore, I stopped at a small fishing village. After eating lunch, I decided to take a walk. I followed a path out of the village, uphill to some cliffs high above the sea. At the edge of these cliffs was the most unusual sight, the wreck of a small sailboat. An old man was sitting along the broken timbers, smoking a pipe. He seemed to be reading my mind when he said, "Odd, isn't it?" "Yes," I answered. "How did it get here?" "Waves carried it up during a storm." "Really?" I said. "It doesn't seem the waves could ever get that high." The old man smiled. "Well, there is another story." He invited me to have a seat and listen to his strange tale. "In our village, years ago," he said, "there was a boy who could sail a boat better than any man in the harbor. He could find a breeze over the flattest sea. When dark clouds kept other boats at anchor, the boy would sail out, ready to prove to the villagers, to the sea itself, how great a sailor he was. One morning, under an ominous sky, he prepared to take his boat, the Zephyr, out to sea. A fisherman warned the boy to stay in port. Already a strong wind was blowing. "I'm not afraid," the boy said, "because I'm the greatest sailor there is." The fisherman pointed to a seagull gliding overhead. "There's the only sailor who can go out on a day like this." The boy just laughed as he hoisted his sails into a blue starry wind. The wind whistled in the rigging as the Zephyr pounded her way through the water. The sky grew black and the waves rose up like mountains. The boy struggled to keep his boat from going over. Suddenly, a gust of wind caught the sail. The boom swung around and hit the boy's head. He fell to the cockpit floor and did not move. When the boy opened his eyes, he found himself lying on a beach. The Zephyr rested behind him, carried there by the storm. The boat was far from the water's edge. The tide would not carry it back to sea. The boy set out to look for help. He walked for a long time and was surprised that he didn't recognize the shoreline. He climbed a hill, expecting to see something familiar, but what he saw instead was a strange and unbelievable sight. Before him were two boats sailing high above the water. Astonished, he watched them glide by. Then a third sailed past, towing the Zephyr. The boats entered a bay that was bordered by a large village. There they left the Zephyr. The boy made his way down to the harbor, to the dock where his boat was tied. He met a sailor who smiled when he saw the boy. Pointing to the Zephyr, he asked, "Yours?" The boy nodded. The sailor said they almost never saw strangers in their island. It was surrounded by a treacherous reef. The Zephyr must have been carried over the reef by the storm. He told the boy that later they would take him and the Zephyr back over the reef. But the boy said he would not leave until he learned to sail above the waves. The sailor told him it took years to learn to sail like that. "Besides," he said, "the Zephyr does not have the right sails." The boy insisted. He pleaded with the sailor. Finally, the sailor said he would try to teach him if the boy promised to leave the next morning. The boy agreed, and the sailor went to a shed and got a new set of sails. All afternoon they sailed back and forth across the bay. Sometimes the sailor took the tiller, and the boat would magically begin to lift out of the water. But when the boy tried, he could not catch the wind that made boats fly. When the sun went down, they went back to the harbor. They dropped the anchor, and the fishermen rowed them to shore. "In the morning," the sailor said, "we'll put your own sails back on the Zephyr and send you home." He took the boy to his house, and the sailor's wife fed them oyster stew. After dinner, the sailor played the concertina. He sang a song about a man named Samuel Blue, who long ago tried to sail his boat overland and crashed. "For the wind over land's never steady nor true, and all men that sail there meet Samuel Blue." When he was done with his song, the sailor sent the boy to bed. But the boy could not sleep. He knew he could fly his boat if he had another chance. He waited until the sailor and his wife were asleep, and he quietly dressed and went to the harbor. As the boy rowed out to the Zephyr, the boy felt the light evening wind grow stronger and colder. Under a full moon, he sailed the Zephyr into the bay. He tried to remember everything the sailor had told him. He tried to feel the wind pulling his boat forward, lifting it up. Then suddenly the boy felt the Zephyr begin to shake. The sound of the water rushing past the hull grew louder. The air filled with spray as the boat sliced through the waves. The bow slowly began to lift. Higher and higher the Zephyr rose out of the water, then finally broke free. The sound of rushing water stopped. There was only the sound of wind in the sails. The Zephyr was flying. Using the stars to guide him, the boy set a course for home. The wind blew very hard, churning the sea below. But that did not matter to the Zephyr as he glided through the night sky. When clouds blocked the boy's view of the stars, he trimmed the sails and climbed higher. Surely the men of the island never dared fly so high. Now the boy was certain he was truly the greatest sailor of all. He steered well. Before the night was over, he saw the moonlit spire of the church at the edge of his village. As he drew closer to the island, an idea took hold of him. He would sail over the village and ring the Zephyr's bell. Then everyone would see him and know that he was the greatest sailor. He flew over the treetop cliffs of the shore, but as he reached the church, the Zephyr began to fall. The wind had shifted. The boy pulled as hard as he could on the tiller, but it did no good. The wind shifted again. He steered for the open sea, but the trees at the cliff's edge stood between him and the water. At first there was just the rustle of leaves brushing the hull. Then the air was filled with the sound of breaking branches and ripping sails. The boat fell to the ground, and here she sits today. "A remarkable tale," I said, as the old man stopped to relight his pipe. "What happened to the boy?" "He broke his leg that night. Of course no one believed his story about the flying boats. It was easier for them to believe that the boy was lost in the storm and thrown up there by the waves." The old man laughed. "No, sir, the boy never amounted to much. People thought he was crazy. He just took odd jobs around the harbor. Most of the time he was out sailing, searching for the island and a new set of sails." A light breeze blew through the trees. The old man looked up. "Wind coming," he said. "I've got some sailing to do." He picked up a cane, and I watched as he limped slowly toward the harbor. The end. There you have The Wreck of the Zephyr, a really magical story, just like many of the other Chris Van Allsburg books. We hope you really enjoyed that. I do have a couple of questions for the children. Do you believe in flying boats? Do you believe the boy's story? And second question, who do you think the old man is? Have a chat with your parents or maybe your friend. If you like that, please click a like and subscribe. Looking forward to bringing you more awesome and great stories here on the Read With Me channel. But until then, please take care. Keep the reading up, children, and we'll see you soon.